Well, good evening, everybody. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta. I saw an interesting video today, and I thought it would be a good idea to share it with everybody. The video is 26 minutes long. It's about aloe's use in health and the human body. Lots of really cool information. Goes right along with some things I've been looking at for a little bit, some natural health products that I've been a strong advocate for, and I'm signing up people like crazy, many of whom are noticing great results already. The reason why I keep bringing this stuff up is because I've realized that there are many ways in which we need to become more sovereign, whether it's with our finances or with our, with Alberta, or even with our health. We've been programmed and conditioned to believe that the only thing that makes us better when we're sick is pharmaceuticals. Now, I don't know about you, but in the last few years, my trust in pharmaceuticals and in the sick care industry has been eroded, with good reason. I think many of you are probably in that same situation. So my mind has been open to different things. And one of the things I've realized is that plants aren't actually the alternative medicine. They're the originals. That's the real deal. Pharmaceuticals are many instances based off of something that a plant already does. And we synthesize it, or some scientists or pharmaceutical companies synthesizes it. They patent it, and they sell it, and they make a bunch of money. It's business. And who can fault them for that? It's business. I mean, it's too bad they're killing people, but business nonetheless. Anyhow, so in this journey, I've had my mind open to different things. I've learned a lot. And when I see something like this, I feel inclined to share it with you because I know that a lot of you are kind of on the same page. And a lot of you are searching for answers in how to become more sovereign, specifically with your health, especially after everything we've seen. So I'm going to watch this YouTube video with you. You can put questions. I'll put questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer as we go. And then afterwards, those of you that are only interested in watching this, you can drop off. For the rest of you that want to learn more about the aloe stuff and what I'm specifically promoting, there's going to be another video that I'll put up right away. That one is a little longer. It's about 40 minutes. But if you're interested in this kind of thing, it is definitely worth your time, and it's worth watching. The VeraCell product that was just released just under a month ago has some really, really cool potential. And after you watch this video explaining what aloe does and what acemannan does and what mannose does and all those things, you might be intrigued to try something that you've never tried before. You might be intrigued about how plants are actually the original and not the alternative. So here we go. Make sure that you put question marks in front of your questions as you comment, and I will do my best to answer them as we go. Oh, and let me know if you can hear the sound on the video. I guess that's probably important, right? I love the 80s music, 90s music. Videos about your adult stem cells, how glyconutrients unlock healing. Hi, Carla.
On April 14, 2005, H.R. McDaniel, MD, traveled to Denver, Colorado to speak at the Capitol building as an invited guest of State Senator Sean Mitchell. Dr. McDaniel spoke for elected officials, their staff members, and interested guests in Senate hearing room number 356 at 9 a.m. Dr. McDaniel is a graduate of the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School and has spent 20 years practicing anatomical and clinical pathology, including positions as the Director of Pathology and Laboratories and Director of Medical Education at Dallas-Fort Worth Medical Center. In 1981, he began research at Fisher Institute for Medical Research using a bean extract to stimulate the immune system. In 1985, he added the work of scientists that had isolated the active principle of the aloe vera plant and conducted the first government-monitored studies in humans using this glyconutrient, aloe polymannan. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Reg McDaniel.
Now, we would not be talking today if in 1994, the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act, referred to DSHEA, was passed. And it had in the preamble a statement that is law of the land that I can assure you I did not learn in medical school. It says science has shown that optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health. That is a very vast reaching statement. Hopefully to hook you into the power of this. Now, having read that, you might say, well, that just kind of goes along with common sense of clean air, clean water, good food, exercise, sleep. But the power of optimized nutrition exceeds anything I ever thought was possible, dreamed was possible, or taught others was possible. This is Brooke, that was born with about a 3-centimeter length blind pocket for an esophagus. That's incompatible with life, and she was sustained by hyperalimentation. But the wonders of modern medicine, they took a segment of small bowel and tunneled under the sternum and brought it up and hooked her stomach to that blind pouch to be able to get food in. As you might imagine, that doesn't work too well. And she had many studies over a period of time, but the mother got her on the dietary supplements we're speaking of, and as they did studies, they realized that down at the stomach, a protrusion began to come and began to grow upward, like a esophagus does in the embryo, and the blind pouch began to extend. The reason I show you that is I hope you'll say, how in the world is this possible? Like this one, Andrea, in California, at 25 weeks when they were doing scans of the uterus, ultrasound, they realized that the arms and legs were not proportional to the body and the head that they should be. So they did amniocentesis and found out she had the gene defect of achondroplastic dwarfism. You're aware of that. It's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And this is considered a permanent, forever and always condition. In pregnancy, the mother started these dietary supplements added to her prenatals. And she was born and she had the deformities of the head and the very short from the wrist to the elbow proportions of the long bones, and immediately started adding the dietary supplements to her diet. She is now 5.5 years old, and the doctors are astounded. Her face changes, the proportions have normalized. The lengths of her long bones are normal, and they've x-rayed the growth centers, and rather than being disorganized, now they are normal, and they anticipate normal development of this child. I hope your question is, how in the world is this possible? Well, for a long time, fact is, we find out that it was Aristotle, over 2,000 years ago, that first wrote, that we have evidence of it, that the salamander can have its tail cut off or one of its legs, and it'll grow it back. In 1779 in Italy, a biologist cut the eye out of a salamander and said within a year it grew its eye back with the lens. And a Frenchman, Benet, said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could figure out how to do this in human beings, or something along this line? And what we've been seeing really did not hit me with the full impact of the significance of some things we've been seeing until I read the book, The Proteus Effect by Ann Parsons, a writer who for nearly 200 years, research has been done trying to figure out how to do what the salamander does in humans. We have not grown any new legs, and of course we don't need a tail. We have fallen into, by accident or divine intervention, and it started for me in 1985 as a member of a group of scientists of over 50 MDs, PhDs, veterinarians, master's degrees, graduate students, and others. Why have human beings been using aloe vera for over 5,000 years to promote health? In many primitive languages, and it's been used every continent, every civilization up to the modern era. The language for this plant has been the medicine plant, the healing plant, the treatment plant, the miracle plant. And we were, the analytical chemist in our team fractionated the gel from the leaf and found through at the Fisher Institute for Medical Research a fraction that had antiviral, anti-tumor, and health-promoting effects, and it was a molecule called mannose. Most of you are familiar with the sugar glucose. It's the culprit in being too high in diabetes, though it's essential to health. We all have to have a blood glucose. But this is very similar in structure, but it's a different sugar, and it's used more in synthesis of glycoproteins and glycolipids, cell or body structure function molecules, than for energy. When this was presented to scientists and medical people, no one wanted to be seen talking to us, because science and medicine had long ago decided that sugars were simply burned for fuel, energy to operate the body, and that important functions in the body were handled by genes or nucleic acids, proteins, which are chains of amino acids, and hormones. A very key paper was published in 1985 by Kornfeld, husband-wife biochemist team from Washington University at St. Louis. And it is 20 miles of difficult, complex biochemistry. And with a graphic artist, we have kind of summarized, and I will not go into the great detail of what is in this graph to summarize that paper, but fundamentally there is a model of a cell, and we have trillions of cells in our body. And this is what you can see at about a 500 magnification under a microscope. A nucleus with the genes and the nucleic acids, which are the programs that a sperm and an egg can come together and build a human body and operate it. The instructions are there for defense, repair, healing, regeneration, and to keep things in balance within the cell.
What an amazing
At this magnification, it looks like there's nothing in the cell out here, what is called cytoplasm. But under electron microscopy at 100,000 magnification, there's an assembly line that makes all the structure function molecules in our body. And you can understand this if you can understand how a major automobile manufacturer makes vehicles. They bring in parts, they have a design. If you have all the parts, you hook them together right, it looks right, and it functions. And that's what each cell in our body does. In this paper, a key thing was present, and this is the molecular depiction of what is going on this assembly line. In the second step, right here, 9 molecules of mannose 6-phosphate are added to amino acids. If you recall, I said the active ingredient from the aloe plant was mannose. This is why human beings have been using aloe vera for over 5,000 years, and this we recognize is why we were seeing such incredible things. Because when we added the mannose from the aloe plant in concentration back to the modern diet, we had parents, patients, doctors, nurses saying, look what happened. It's a miracle. I'm here to tell you it's no miracle. No more a miracle than people used to die of scurvy, pellagra, and beriberi. Over 2 million British sailors died of scurvy alone. I've been a physician 42 years this year, and I have never seen a case of scurvy, pellagra, or beriberi, because we found out substances so small it's difficult to even analyze them, are vitally important. And if they're missing from our food, it can be lethal and cause deformity. And that is the nature of this. Another point about this is we raise mannose sugars in the rice paddies and the grain fields across North America by the untold tons. But when you make white rice and white enriched flour, you strip it out, put it into animal food, and when you add it back, incredible things happen. Now, having found this before the DSHEA law was passed in '94, we entered into a new drug approval process, which is in 3 phases.
Look that up.
First is
DSHEA law.
toxicity phases, starting in animals and tissue culture. We did this with the active ingredient from the aloe glyconutrient now, glyco from the Greek, meaning sweet or sugar. And our problem was we found no toxicity. That is medical heresy. The father of pharmacology, Paracelsus, 500 years ago, said all drugs are poisons. The benefit depends on the dose. And to not be able to, in huge amounts for extended period, to cause any toxicity to the liver, kidneys, bone marrow is without precedent. Now you go into a second phase, a third phase, and the point I want to make is that it takes about 10 to 20 years to go through this, and the U.S. pharmaceutical industry says it costs about $840 million to do this.
It's more in Canada.
I saw in Wall Street Journal that Box, they claim $813 million was spent getting one claim for pain for arthritis. Well, fortunately, with the Dietary Supplement Act of '94, we abandoned this because dietary chains of mannose sugars, that doesn't sound like a drug, does it? And it's not toxic. And in fact, it doesn't work like a drug. But a key point of this is why new drugs cost so much. And if we had been successful in going through this, I can assure you what is made available for 65, 75 cents a tablet or capsule or in bulk for 25, 35 cents would be selling somewhere between $8 and $15 for the same amount. Well, at this point, we abandoned it because this law was passed. Along the way, we had been seeing some unusual and unexpected clinical responses. Fact is, responses that I was taught and taught others will not happen. We had Down syndrome children getting out of special education, beginning to remember and be healthy and even change their appearance. We had children with gene defects where their brains don't develop, leukodystrophies, come out of coma and begin to develop. We had Alzheimer's patients that had been mute for 1, 2 years, now can stand before you and talk to you just as I can. We had old stable strokes up to 26 years, major motor and sensory defects return. We had autistic children and Asperger's, a mild form of this, and dystonias and ADD, ADHD, Parkinsonism. We have over 300 documented Parkinson patients that have responded. Huntington's chorea, traumatic brain injury.
I just want to stop this for a second and read that topic thing in case you can't read it. Unusual and unexpected clinical responses, 1994 through 2003, using glyconutrients such as mannose. So what that means is these were clinical trials, and this was unusual and unexpected things that they found happening during those clinical trials.
And then fetal alcohol syndrome, and I have a asterisk there because I was invited to go to Canada to explain how these children had gone from special education, IQs less than 50, to regular classes and estimated IQ over 100. This was kind of like a slap in the face and a wake-up call that, as I showed you the assembly line of just restoring a few missing parts, just did not seem to cover the significance of this. And there was a clue back when we were doing the phase 1 toxicity studies before the DSHEA Act that after 1 week of adding this to the diet of dogs in their peripheral blood, and it was followed then by AIDS patients, ulcerative colitis patients, cancer patients, then hospital employees, students on rotations through the hospital, in other words, normals. And for orientation, this is the normal size of a red cell. These are platelets, 1 to 2 micron, about 6 micron here. These are lymphocytes, the nucleus about 6 microns. But in the peripheral blood, there were huge cells. And here's one that is, the gene is turned on and it's beginning to make substances that are structure function. For over a year, we call these cells G cells because that's what I said the first time I saw them. Gee, I've never seen anything like this in blood. But this precipitated studies to determine could this be toxicity or damage. And eventually we found out by sophisticated instrumentation that these cells were monocyte macrophages which participate in defense, repair, and healing, which we were seeing clinically. And so we said, well, these are just very active cells doing what they always do better. If you will notice, before taking the products, if you had a white cell count of, say, 10,000, there would be 10,000 dots here. But there's a fluorescent channel to identify what kind of cells these are with an antibody with a fluorescent tag on it. And most people are aware that AIDS patients have a virus that attacks their CD4 helper lymphocytes. And if you have the proper antibody with the fluorescence on it, the computer can separate it out and you can get your count of how these cells have been attacked by the virus. So these could be CD4 helper lymphocytes. Under the red arrow, there are no big cells. But a week after adding to the diet the active ingredient from the aloe plant, the polymannose, here are the big cells. And with the proper antibody, they are monocyte macrophages, and we thought we had the answer to the problem and forgot it for 15 years. Now, I showed you an assembly line, and a very key point I wanted to make from that these are substances that are made on the assembly line. And they're called interleukins, tumor necrosing factor, interferons. Here are colony growth factors for repair. But these are mixed leukocyte cultures overnight. And in standard media is the solid bar. Then you add 1, 10, 100, and 1,000, and you see the synthesis of these defense, repair, and regeneration molecules go up as the supply is increased. These are involved with communication between white cells, particularly, that I have found in the lung of virus or in the kidney of bacteria or an abnormal cell, and to do something about it. Remember, they're called cytokines, cell activators. They're sent between cells much like IBM cards. And on the assembly line I showed you, as you add more of the mannose, more is made, and this allows increased promotion of health. Now, a paper was published in the National Academy of Science 2003, and it's entitled A Human Peripheral Blood Monocyte. Remember, that's what we call those cells, CD14. Derived subset acts as plural potential stem cells. Plural potential stem cells means from your own bone marrow. Adult stem cells can make all the cell layers that embryonal stem cells make, from the surface ectoderm, the cells in the middle, the mesoderm, the cells at the center, the endoderm, which are epithelial cells on the surface, endothelial cells that line the capillaries of the blood, liver cells, T lymphocytes, macrophages, mature ones, and neurons. Remember the list of the conditions I said that were responding that should not respond. Well, this shows that the type of cells that we were showing on the flow cytometer can make all of these, and they're listed in the paper as you add cytokines, the very molecules that I just showed you in the bar graphs that your own cells can make. They were using recombinant DNA and other exogenous added to the stem cells and getting this differentiation. Now, to show you the magnitude of the fetal alcohol syndrome children from the Indian reservations in Canada, these are 36 traits. They're questions that are asked of the school-age fetal alcohol syndrome child. One of the questions would be they do things in public that it's only appropriate to do in private, and you can't teach them otherwise. And it goes down through many questions like this. And over time, they have learned that if you have of these 36, from 10 to 15 yeses, these children will never be educatable, trainable, employable, never live independently, and be a ward of the state for life. These 7 children averaged 27.7. The lowest was 20. That is terrible fetal alcohol syndrome damage from the toxicity of alcohol. But the adoptive and foster parents said, on putting them on these supplements that are designed for children, they've improved. So we modified this and said, if you said yes on a score of 1 to 10, from normal to terrible to impossible, how bad it is. And it was an average of 8. Terrible, terrible fetal alcohol syndrome damage. But after a minimum of a year on the supplements, they averaged 2.5, and that's a 67% improvement. Now, that's just numbers. Let me translate that into living. This little girl at the age of 9.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I just wanted to let you all know I was at a luncheon, and it was like a lobbying luncheon where people bought tickets to go to this lunch, and Premier Smith was there, and it gave them an opportunity to stand up and do a 2-minute pitch for something they're doing that they wanted the government to look at. Now, I can't remember exactly the person's name or what the company was, but a lady stood up and she pitched. Is my sound on? Yeah. She pitched what her company was doing, and what her company did is it focused on the 4 pillars of health, which is rest, relaxation, exercise, and nutrition. And they took kids with developmental issues, with things like ADHD, whatever, and focused on those 4 things, starting with nutrition. So no more corn pops for breakfast, no more candy, no more crap diet. And what she said was, you know, they moved kids from having those labels to not. So having attention problems to not, having behavioral issues to not, specifically focusing on rest, relaxation, exercise, and in nutrition specifically. Now, what she said, the implications for government and for Alberta were that if the Alberta government, if Alberta Health adopted a stance that focused on those 4 pillars of health before pharmaceuticals, Alberta could shave roughly half of its cost in sick care, only by focusing on those things, nutrition being one of the most important. So, you know, when I saw this, I immediately thought back to that, what it means when you're getting proper nutrition, proper nutrients, and giving your body the tools that it needs. Anyway, I'll let it continue.
And was still in special education and had not been able to master her numbers or her alphabet, much less read or add or subtract, and was a behavior problem at home and in school. She has been on these products 3 years. She's now in regular classes, making A's, B's, and C's, writes poetry insightful of her experiences that thrills her teachers and foster mother. But she called us excited that she had gotten her hands on a new Harry Potter book of over 800 pages and read it in less than a week for pleasure, and then could tell you about it. That is what I said brought a crisis in this. Something beyond what we'd done before had to be happening. Here is also an example of a study that has started in Houston, Texas. The first 4 patients with Alzheimer's disease, using the Alzheimer's Global Score for the association, at 90 days, by adding the dietary supplements, they had a 42% improvement in their scores on their Alzheimer's. I understand now they have about 50, and I'm looking forward to analyzing those, but we've had others that have done incredible. Well, while I was making assessments of the fetal alcohol children and the inadequacy to go up there and explain the degree and the nature of changes, this paper was published in the Journal of American Medical Association as a summary of a paper that had been in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Two science authors, MD, PhD, Eva Mezzi from the National Institutes of Health, and Dr. Barbara Crane, neuropathologist at Johns Hopkins, report in this on 4 female leukemic patients at Johns Hopkins, 2 teenagers and 2 in the 20s, that had all the treatment for leukemia, including high-dose chemotherapy with bone marrow rescue from only male donors. It did not work. They died. They came to autopsy, and they analyzed their brains, and they found out that in the brains of all of these females were multiple neurons. This is under ultraviolet microscopy light. Here's the axon, the neuron, the highest functioning cell in the human body, where information, relationships, values are made, control of our body is centered. But they found little red fluorescent dots because they had treated these neurons with an antibody with a fluorescent tag against the Y chromosome. Only male cells in their genome have Y chromosomes. And here we have, sitting in a female brain that had had bone marrow transplant from males only, Y chromosomes. And as Dr. Mezzi said, it was like there was a signal in the brain. We've lost a neuron. Come here, little stem cell, migrate into the brain and become and replace this neuron. This is absolute proof of this. And when we saw this, and then we went back and found the paper that showed the transformation of adult stem cells by the Chinese investigator Zhang, we knew that this population of cells that we had seen was the cause or the source. Now, to summarize this, the dietary supplementation supports the development of patients' adult stem cells. There's migration and transformation and differentiation under the patient's gene control, and it seeks out damaged cells by using normal apoptosis, that is normal physiology that goes very slowly on in our bodies. Stem cells from our own bone marrow migrate in and replace damaged and aged cells. The supplementation enhances this. Very important, there's no rejection of foreign cells, has been noted in type 1 diabetic stem cells from donors and embryos that were celebrated that they had infused. They migrated into the pancreas of the diabetics, transformed into beta cells, and began to make insulin, and the individuals no longer needed insulin for about 8 to 10 months, and then it went backwards because on the membrane of those cells is just when you have an organ transplant for a lung, heart, kidney, that it's someone else, and the immune system recognizes it and destroys these valuable cells. This is done at a cost of $25 to $50 per week. Hundreds of patients demonstrate that.
And that's pretty much the end of that. I'm not sure why the video cuts off there, but it does. There's only 26 minutes. Anyhow, I hope you found that interesting. I sure did. I'm going to look and see if I can find the rest of that thing. It would be nice, but until then, I guess we'll have to imagine what the rest of it said. So that link up here, that QR code actually links to the VeraCell page. And the reason I wanted to do this tonight is because, some of the things that I've been hearing about nutraceuticals, and specifically this thing, is you can't not talk about it. Like this is pretty cool stuff. And I actually kind of wonder what the world would look like if more people, had an open mind about getting back to the OG medicine rather than, I guess we can't call it medicine because it's a plant, rather than pharmaceuticals. You saw why things like natural products don't get approved and on the market to treat things. There's no money in it for them, but there's certainly a lot of benefit for us. So I'm going to put on another video for you to watch. This video is, let me just find it here. This video is the VeraCell product launch that we saw in St. Joseph, Missouri, when Jessica and I were down there about 3 weeks ago. The guy that's going to be talking in this video is named Sam Castor, and he's going to explain to you where this product came from, why it exists, why it's important, why people should talk about it and share it, and some other things. And I want to point something out. There's only 85 people total watching this right now across all of the platforms that I'm streaming on. If it was something with, someone getting punched or screamed at or something exciting, there'd be a couple hundred people watching. They want the entertainment. But you folks that are watching this, you're here for something different. You're here because you want sovereignty over your own health, and you're willing to listen to things and try stuff that could benefit you and hopefully share it with your friends. So kudos to you. I hope you enjoy this next video. It's about 45 minutes long, and I would encourage you to watch this right through to the end and think on this tonight as you go to bed. And then tomorrow, if you're interested, send me a message. You should all know how to get a hold of me by now. My email is readily available. You can reach me on Facebook Messenger. The YouTube stuff, I don't usually get too much into that. Don't like messaging, whatever. So email, text message, or Facebook Messenger, and I'll send you all the information you want. I'm looking for people who want to, try this and see how it benefits them. And I'm also looking for people who want to build something and share stuff like this with other people and help them too. In the next week, I'm going to do a live stream with some of the new people that have come on board to my team. And I think you folks are going to be pretty excited, and you're likely going to want to be part of it as well. So yeah, you can look forward to that. Anyhow, without further ado, here is the VeraCell launch video from St. Joseph, Missouri, 3 weeks ago. Let's see if I can do it right.
But the world spends billions of dollars in healthcare.
And you're going to have to just let me know if you can hear it.
In making sure people can experience that without having to spend that kind of money. So we built VeraCell around the truth, not a trend, not a shortcut, but a foundation.
VeraCell, right up there.
So we get to the foundation, right? Everything built on top of that changes. So anyway, I want to just take a minute and by the way,
before he takes a minute, I'm going to take a minute. If you showed up at my page because somebody has shared this with you, don't click on my QR code. Don't message me about this. Message the person who shared this video with you. They're very likely on my team, and even if they're not, I don't care. I just want to make sure that people stick with their people. And those that share this stuff are compensated appropriately, because that's how this model works. It's a peer-to-peer commerce thing. So people use the products, they share the results, they bring other people in, and instead of paying a marketing company, the people that share get paid. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
All of Sam's, he won't mention this, but all of Sam's royalties for this product goes right to this foundation, to Mana Relief. Everything, every penny. There's nothing that's not shared. So this foundation that he built with his wife, Linda, feeds thousands of people every single day. It's helped tremendous amount of people. So with that, I want to take this moment and introduce Mr. Sam Castor.
Hey.
Well, I met Sam, and I spent quite a bit of time talking to him, and he's a really cool guy, down to earth.
Thank you.
You guys built huge companies, and there he is talking to a burger flipper from near Alberta. Great guy.
Yeah, I've got 45 minutes to give you 30 years worth of perspective. So let's get on with this. So I am Sam, and my wife and I founded Mana Relief. It's a ministry that takes advanced immune support and provides it to the world's most medically fragile children. And we've been doing that since 1999. And this year we surpassed 300 million servings of this advanced technology to kids in 90 countries. Woo. So what I've been asked to do today is just share my unique perspective on this whole project. And there's three things that are going to be implemented this weekend that I do have a lot of perspective on. Number one, your access to a discovery that is disrupting the world's most powerful industry. That is called the sick care industry. And sickness is a $10.4 trillion a year business around the world, 4.6 trillion in this country alone. And here's what's interesting about that. Not one of the people that are customers want to be a customer, right? Nobody wants to be in the sick care funnel. So what's the resolution to that? Get healthy. What's the resolution to get healthy? Optimize your immune system's response to whatever you're dealing with. It is the only thing that modern medicine has never been able to replicate is the power of the human body to heal itself. That's only a provision that God put in nature, and that's what you're going to get access to this weekend. The second thing is a mission providing this same technology to the world's most vulnerable children. As Randy and Kathy just said, they have agreed that for every package of VeraCell that is sold, a child will be nourished for 30 days. So you get a benefit for 30 days, a kid gets a benefit for 30 days. And I got to tell you, that is not your typical donation model. The typical donation model from corporations is a percentage of profit. This is not profit. This is a top line give. So no matter what happens in the business, if the lights go out or whatever, the donation gets made because it's based off of the purchase of a product, not a percentage of profit. It's incredible. Big commitment. And then the last thing is a revolutionary new people-driven platform that's addressing this global problem. Now, why does it have to be a people-driven platform? Well, there's two reasons for it. Number one, magnitude of this volume, this level of change has never come through institutions. It has never come through governments. It has only come through global people movements. The second reason is because changing sick care to health will not come through the existing system. It's opposed to the existing system. The existing system will fight it every inch of the way. That's why a people movement is necessary to take this to the nations. Now, here's the interesting point. Billions of people will go to bed tonight praying for a resolution for a health issue they have in their family, or themselves, or their children, or their parents, or their friends. And there is no resolution in the healthcare industry, sick care industry. And then we show up with a technology that can change their lives. That's why it has to be driven through a people-driven movement. Okay, on to the discovery. So I'm going to talk to you about a molecule in nature that's called acemannan. Acemannan comes from the fresh gel of the aloe vera plant. Now, maybe 40 years ago, a group of research pharmacologists, what they're doing in pharmacology is always looking for the next wonder drug, right? What will be the biggest thing that we could produce? Well, there was something in the fresh gel of the aloe vera plant that was causing an immune response unlike anything that they had ever seen in pharmacology. So, the good news is that after 24 hours, it was completely gone. Why is that good news? Because it's a labile molecule that needs to be stabilized. You can't patent a naturally occurring molecule, but you can patent the stabilization of it. So if they could discover what the molecule was, if they could stabilize it, they could file patents and hopefully bring this to market, again, as the next wonder drug. It turned out to be a long-chain polysaccharide made up of a sugar called mannose. Now, you may have never heard of mannose, but every cell in your body has to have it for proper structure and function, and it is the most essential saccharide in your body for optimizing your immune system's response to everything that you have to deal with. So it's a pretty important molecule. So this company did discover the molecule. They did stabilize it for the very first time, and they created a publicly traded pharmaceutical company to commercialize the discovery that was called Carrington Laboratories. They raised a lot of money. They invested about $100 million in research to, number one, define its safety parameters, to look at its mechanisms of action. In other words, how did it actually work in the human body? What were the things that created such an incredible benefit, again, that they'd never seen in pharmacology? Now, they were successful in doing that and filing and receiving over 130 patents. So patents on the stabilization processes, patents on the various uses of the molecule in veterinary medicine, in pharmacology, in nutrition, in skin care, in wound care. All those were patented because they had the only stabilized acemannan that had ever been seen in the world. The three primary mechanisms of action of acemannan are, number one, the sugar mannose is necessary for the coating of proteins. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Every protein in your body has 30 trillion cells, and each cell has 10 trillion proteins. Every one of those proteins has to be coated with a combination of sugars. They're like letters of the alphabet that provide that protein with its function. So that gets the specificity of the protein's function in alignment with these sugar molecules. The key sugar in what is called glycoprotein synthesis turns out to be mannose. So that's one of the mechanisms of action. It provides the body with a key saccharide. Number two, it improves gut health. It's a soluble fiber. All soluble fiber can be fermented in the gut, which then feeds friendly bacteria and produces short-chain fatty acids, which are essential for keeping a healthy gut. The third mechanism of action is called macrophage activation. This is why the pharmaceutical company was interested in acemannan. The macrophage is the master regulator of defense. It's a large white blood cell. And through cell surface activation, it will optimize the entire immune system's response to everything that is going on, every disease, every pathogen, whatever is happening in the body. Macrophages are necessary to do that. And they help modulate the immune system's response to all of that. So in this book of, or Journal of Immunology, it talks about the importance of macrophages and their ability to identify pathogens like viruses and bacteria, their ability to identify and kill aberrant cells like cancer cells, their ability to modulate the up and down regulation of the immune system, and they're responsible for stem cell production. So through the intervention of acemannan in a very critical health condition, they were able to detect that macrophage activation could increase stem cell production by up to 400%. Now, there's a lot said about stem cells. Whoever thought it would come naturally through a molecule in nature? But it did. You don't have to read this. I just want you to know it exists. This is the first patent that was issued on the use of acemannan. Now, I'm just going to read the first line. This is according to Mark and No to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Acemannan has been shown to be effective in treating of a number of conditions where the principal mechanism of resolution or cure requires the intervention of the patient's immune system. Okay, there's two things I want you to just really get on this. Number one, it's not where the principal resolution is acemannan. The principal resolution is the patient's immune system. Okay, so here's the thing you need to take home from this. Acemannan does not cure anything. It optimizes the body's immune system to everything. That's a big distinction between a nutrient and a drug. A drug alters physiology, a nutrient supports it. So when somebody says, well, what does this product do for cancer or diabetes or autoimmune disorders or whatever, the answer is it doesn't. It optimizes your body's immune system to whatever that condition is. Now, what does that mean? The body is capable of healing itself from everything. There is nothing that the body can't heal itself if it's supported appropriately. And acemannan is the only molecule in nature that has that mechanism of action. That's the uniqueness of it. So you see on their methods for treating cancer and viral diseases and respiratory and immune regulation. Is there any drug that does anything like that? There's not. It's the power of the human immune system to heal itself, and that's what's so critical. Okay, so they got this incredible patent that acemannan can enhance the body's ability to do anything. Well, let's prove our theory. So in 1987, they said, let's take on the toughest medical condition that exists. It was called AIDS. In the nothing was treating AIDS. You know, they didn't even know it was a virus for a while. Once they determined it was a virus, then it was like, is there any drug that is already made that can kill the AIDS virus? Because then it appeared that there was. And so a lady by the name of Jasbir Cologne, who's the lead investigator, is a virologist at National Institutes of Health, was assigned to find something to kill the AIDS virus. And the only thing that she could find in the entire oncology portfolio was AZT. Now, AZT was a drug that was developed for the treatment of leukemia 10 years prior, but it was so toxic it had never made it to market. But it did kill the AIDS virus. But Jasbir Cologne said, yeah, but it'll kill more patients than AIDS. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So she was at her wit's end and decided to look at a biologic, which is acemannan. So she took it into the lab, and this is after an anecdotal trial had been done on 14 AIDS patients, just a little pilot study, where the AIDS patients improved 70% in their biomarkers. There was nothing like that in pharmacology. She took it into her lab, and what she detected, a cell line culture study showed that acemannan inhibited 100% of the virus replication. That, folks, was unheard of. Now, how important do you think something like that would have been in the 1980s? You would have think it would have just been the next penicillin. But two things happened as a result of that study. Number one, Carrington's stock price shot through the roof, right? I mean, a treatment for AIDS, are you kidding? And for everything else that people didn't even know about. The second thing that happened is it put Big Pharma on notice. There's a biological ingredient that's about to trump out half of the drugs that have ever been developed, just because of its capacity to do what drugs can't do, which is optimize the healing processes of the human body. So big drug companies and all the agencies they fund were put on notice. What was the result of that? Well, the NIH had just approved a new czar for AIDS, whose name is Anthony Fauci. You ever heard of that guy? So in 1988, he had been made the new czar to find the treatment for AIDS. So when all this started surfacing, he fast-tracked AZT to market for the only exclusive treatment for AIDS. And because it was the only standard of care treatment approved, if you wanted to use your insurance, if you wanted a doctor to administer it, if you wanted to get treatment in a hospital, it had to be AZT. Because nothing was going to take the place of a pharmaceutical drug for the treatment of the world's biggest plague. The second thing that happened is Carrington had made their new drug application, and the FDA, who receives 80% of their funding from Big Pharma, rejected their new drug application. Can you imagine all the potential that this ingredient had, and it got rejected? Now, the unofficial reason is because maybe it was in conflict with their client's product line. The official reason for turning down the application was, number one, all drugs have to establish a toxic level. It's called an LD50. The way you determine that is you inject your investigative new drug into laboratory mice. You start increasing the dosage until you've killed half the mice. That's called an LD50. And that's used as a threshold for human consumption. Because obviously, before you do human trials, you want to know how much will kill a person, right? So every drug has to establish an LD50. The second thing is every drug has to show a drug effect. In other words, every drug has to alter the physiology of a disease process or a biomarker. Well, acemannan didn't do either one of those two. It's completely non-toxic. They just pumped gallons of acemannan into laboratory mice, and they just got better. You know, they could not kill anything. And so the FDA said, you haven't developed a drug, you've developed a nutrient. And so we're rejecting your application. Now, their stock dropped. They were in panic mode, you know, because they'd spent $100 million and they were committed to another $100 million worth of research because it takes a lot of time and money to bring a drug to market. And they were kind of under the impression that at some point common sense would override bureaucracy, right? Never happened. In the meantime, they needed to generate revenue. So what they were willing to do is make the world's first standardized, stabilized acemannan product as a dietary supplement. And it was called Manipul. That was their trademark name. Now, these guys are pharmacologists. They don't know anything about nutrition. They don't know anything about how to enter that market, how to educate consumers. And that's when I was introduced to Carrington Labs. Just a little bit about my story. My wife and I had been entrepreneurs all of our life, and we had done a lot of businesses. And in 1993, we were at a place in our lives where we wanted our life's work to account for more than just a paycheck. We wanted to start making a contribution. We didn't know what that looked like. We just wanted a kingdom purpose business. And so my wife said, let's just pray about it. And I said, okay, let's do that. So we did. And while we were praying, my wife started writing in her journal. And when we got through, she said, this is what God just laid on my heart. He's going to bless us with a Joseph company of provision that will touch the lives of people in all nations, and we're to steward it for kingdom purposes. Now, that was like 4 months before. Okay, so then I get this call because I have a background of bringing new disruptive technologies into the marketplace. And so I go meet with the senior management of Carrington Labs. They tell me this whole story. And so now they want to bring this into the market as a dietary supplement. So I spent a week talking with their doctors, their researchers. I mean, it was like, this is the second coming of penicillin. Are you kidding me? I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of this? So I went home one night and I was talking to my wife and I said, you remember that prophetic word you got about a Joseph company of provision that would touch the lives of people in all nations? I think I know what it involves. It's about us helping to take this into the market. So I went back to Carrington Labs and I said, I don't want to help you do this. I want to do it. So what would it cost me to license the exclusive rights to that as a dietary supplement? And that took a while to figure out, but we finally did. And so in 1994, I started a company called Manitech to do nothing but market this incredible technology and other supplements that would complement it. And it was just an incredible success. I mean, we were just blowing and going. Then in 1994, 2 years after we'd opened, by the way, I hired the chief science officer and the medical director from Carrington Labs and brought them into my company because they could see the writing on the wall. It was never going to get approved as a drug. And so they wanted to be a part of a company that would bring the technology they'd done all the research on into the marketplace. So we were sitting there talking about how could we improve acemannan because the patent life on it was already half over. How do we extend the patent? What do we do? And so we looked at those mechanisms of action, and Dr. Bill McAnally opened up his medical school text, biochemistry text, to a chapter on glycobiology. Glycobiology wasn't even coined as a term until 1989. In other words, it's the newest science in human physiology. And it's the discovery of how 8 sugars, those 8 sugars right there, are used like letters of the alphabet on the ends of proteins to create cellular messages. In other words, all biological data is transferred through those messages. Turns out that only 2 of those sugars are common in our diet. Now the body, they're so critical, has a backup mechanism for converting like glucose into those others, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. So they said, here's a proposition. What if we could go find plant sources of all of those instead of just mannose, put them into a composition and file what's called a composition of matter patent on the first nutritional glycobiology product. And that's what we did. And we did receive our patent. In fact, we received over 100 patents on that technology. And we pioneered the field of nutritional glycobiology, again, by putting mannopole into a blend of other polysaccharides containing those other 8 essential sugars. Okay, the only glitch in our story, because guys, we just exploded. I mean, we tripled volume 5 years in a row. It was just incredible, the path that we were on. What was the reason? Because we were just meeting people's needs. You know, these billions of people that are praying every night, you show up with this story, it's worth a try, right? So here's the only glitch. 2005, this is really important for defining what you've got that is so unique in the entire industry. Dr. Bill McAnally, who discovered acemannan, said, you know, the patents are running out on the processing. I think I've got a new way to process and stabilize acemannan. So he did it. With a company in Mexico, we stabilized it, we brought it back to the lab. Through high pressure liquid chromatography, you could see the amount of acemannan in the extract. So in the original mannopole, it was 12.7. In the new advanced, we called it advanced acemannan, it was 12.1. So relatively the same. We put it in the glyconutrient blend, we put it out to the market, and people started saying our symptoms are coming back. It's not having the same response as the original. And our goal was to get rid of the original because mannopole was so expensive. It was a pharmaceutical company. They were getting their investment back. This new product was just half the cost and had the same amount of acemannan. But for some reason, it didn't work as well. Not that it didn't work at all, it just didn't work as well. And it remained a mystery for several years, but the understanding and the solution to that mystery is what we're going to talk about that you got access to. Okay, now, we got this company of destiny, you know, we're fulfilling what we think is what we've been called to do, but something felt like it was missing. How are we going to get this technology into all nations? Because only about 20 or 30 countries can afford the type of technology we were bringing into the marketplace. And we just couldn't quite get our arms around that. So I was in Romania in 1997. My wife and I at that time were building our family through adoption. We adopted all of our kids from all over the world. We were expanding, thank you. We were expanding faster internationally than my company was at that moment. And so we were in Romania, and I was talking to a caregiver of an orphanage organization that we were financially supporting. And I just asked the question, what are you dealing with that you can't get your arms around? What can I help you with maybe that no one else is helping you with? What's your biggest problem? And she said, our biggest problem is the health of our children. They're sick all the time. We have poor nutrition, poor sanitation, lots of stress, no access to health care. So our kids get sick and they very rarely get better. We lose 30 to 40 kids a year from immune deficiency related diseases. And I'm sitting here with acemannan, you know, and this glyconutrient blend. And I said, look, you don't know me and what I do. I'm going to send you this incredible technology called acemannan. And all you got to do is put it in the food of these kids every day, and you will see their lives transformed in ways you can't even imagine. Really, the most difficult thing in doing that was acemannan came in 5-kilo bags of white powder. So sending that through customs, we found was a difficult proposition. But we finally figured it out. They put it into the foods of their children, and just amazing. At the end of the year, we recontacted each other, and she said, you're not going to believe what's happened to our children. They're healthier than we've ever seen them. And for the first time in over a decade, not one child died. Well, she said, everybody that we've told and networked with in our industry wants to know how can they get access to this incredible technology. And so we thought, well, how do we facilitate that? It's not coming through our business. So we founded our ministry, which was called Manna Relief in 1999, officially a 501c3 registration. Okay, so to send acemannan around, we did it originally in this product called Hope Boost. It was just acemannan in a base of stabilized rice bran, because stabilized rice bran is very nutritionally dense, and these kids were malnourished in addition to being immune compromised. But you know, over the years, we looked at all different kinds of way of delivering acemannan to children. I remember one time I put it in gummy bears. I thought, I am so clever, right? Kids will eat gummy bears. This will be incredible. I sent pallets to Africa. By the time they opened it, it was gummy bear, right? It had all melted and it was one big blob. And, you know, I made breakfast cereal out of acemannan. I did a protein like a Kix. And I go into an orphanage one time and they're grinding up the cereal. And I said, why are you grinding the cereal? Well, we're going to put it in the soup. Well, why wouldn't you just feed the kids the cereal? Well, we do, but they get tired of eating the same thing every day. And, you know, so it was hard to find a delivery system. And then the president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, who's our distribution partner for Manna Relief, said, I want to introduce you to somebody that makes powdered milk for Mexico, for the government. And I sat down with him and I thought, wait a minute, milk is the #1 food commodity for children worldwide. Every child drinks it and they drink it every day. So we created a product called Mighty Milk. And it's enriched with acemannan. We enriched it with additional vitamins and minerals. It is singly the most important technology that we've ever sent out across the world. Well, President Fox and his wife Martha have been very instrumental in helping us open up the rest of the world. They introduced us to global leaders in developing countries around the world who are struggling, you know, with the same issue, the health of their children. In Uganda, we met with the president of Uganda, Museveni. They mandated it in every hospital in Uganda. The leading doctor in Africa for AIDS was a man named Dr. Benakinga. He mandated it in all of his AIDS hospitals. And it was just remarkable, the things that we saw. I'm telling you guys, you have no idea about what you're in for. So it didn't matter where we took it in the world, we saw the same response. I told the group yesterday, we even took it into North Korea. And somebody asked me one time, how did a Christian not-for-profit get into North Korea? And the answer is really simple. We saved their children's lives. When you save the lives of children, it transcends politics, religion, every barrier that is set up comes down when you do that. Okay, so now my business is growing like crazy, the Manatech business, but my Manna Relief business is struggling because it's all based off of a charity. Has anybody in here ever run a charity? I never had. It took me about 30 days to figure out it's full-time begging, part-time work. Because nothing happens unless you're raising money. Doesn't matter what your desire is, what your technology is. If you don't have the money, nothing happens. And so, you know, we'd have good months and bad months of fundraising, and I'd build a donor base up to where we were feeding maybe 80,000 kids a day. And there'd be a glitch in the economy and I'd lose 50, 60% of my donors overnight. And I went through that cycle 2 or 3 times. And every time I went through the downside of that cycle, I'd have to call the distribution partners and say, sorry, I'm going to have to cut your donation in half. Mrs. Fox wanted nothing to do with that. You know, go cut somebody else's. Every one of our children need this, right? So I was explaining the dynamics of fundraising and the unsustainability. And President Fox said, I know the answer to your problem. I said, really? He said, have you ever heard of a business model called social entrepreneurship? I said, no. He said, well, it's a new breed of entrepreneur that's leveraging the economic power of the marketplace to provide sustainable solutions to the world's biggest problems. So instead of begging for money, they use a business and they take the profits from the business and fund their not-for-profit activity. He said, I'm hosting the first international symposium this summer at the Fox Center in Leon, Mexico. You need to come and learn the system. The guest host was Muhammad Yunus. He won the Nobel Prize in 2006 for the creation of a concept called microfinance, started the Grameen Bank. And today it's the #1 strategy for addressing global poverty. Put people into business. Don't just subsidize their life. Create a business and allow them, the dignity of earning their way on their own. Just in Bangladesh, where he was from, he impacted the lives of 40 million people. Is that crazy? Okay, so we learned about social entrepreneurship. Stanford was there with their social innovation review, and they said the best practice in social business, social entrepreneurship is called buy one, give one. It connects the person purchasing your product directly with the cause, because whatever they buy is what is going to be received by the recipient of the donation. So with nutrition, it's when someone takes one of our life-changing technologies for themselves, a child will get it. Same thing. And at the conference, it was agreed that probably the most opportunistic social entrepreneur platform could be developed for the global pandemic or epidemic of poor health and disease. Why? Because it's not working, and it's completely unsustainable, our current sick care model. And so President Fox had me do a presentation on acemannan, and everybody agreed, go home, create a social business, do this, we'll all help. We'll help you take it around the world, blah, blah, blah. I was so doggone excited I couldn't see straight. I couldn't sleep. So I get home and I go to my board of directors and I say, okay, now this is a company I created and founded, right? So I should have some influence. All right. I want to convert us into a social business, social entrepreneur. What's that mean? It means every time we sell a product, we donate a product. Okay, here was my problem. In 1999, I took my company public to raise money for international expansion. Once you go public, your board of directors is only obligated to one thing, and that's called shareholder equity. And it didn't take me long to figure out that nourishing children and shareholder equity live on two different planets. They don't coexist. And so it took my board of directors a long time, about a year, to do their outside research. But they finally came back and said, we think it's too big of a risk. We're not going to do it. Okay. That was kind of the fork in the road for my wife and I. It's like, what do we do with the rest of our lives? We sat down with our kids and we say, we're comfortable here. We got a business doing about $500 million a year. It's everything we've ever dreamed of, but we're never going to get to the end result of the destiny that we've been called to. So in 2014, I resigned from the company that I started, gave up everything to start all over again. It was a rocky road there for a while. The company sued me. It was all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I met up with this guy, Dr. Santiago Rodriguez. You might remember his name. He created Manipole. So he worked for Carrington Labs, and he stabilized the acemannan and made all the products. He had gone off into business for himself. And so I went and visited with Santiago, and I said, so what are you doing? He said, I want to show you something. And he pulled this out. This is from the Journal of I forget which one it was, one of the medical journals. And he said, International Immunopharmacology, yeah. And he said, a group of researchers out of South Korea broke down acemannan into fractions, because all these polysaccharides exist in a broad range of molecular weights, small chain, medium chain, long chain. We knew they didn't all bind to the macrophage to cause that immune response. We just didn't know which ones did. And so we just stabilized it all. And by chance, your product had enough in it that it made it efficacious. So when people took it, they got a response. Turns out that the molecules have to be between 5,000 and 400,000 Daltons to actually bind to the macrophage. So macrophages have a mannose receptor site because remember that glycoprotein? When a cell becomes sick, it takes mannose and puts it on the end of the structure. So the macrophage is looking for mannose. So when it sees it, even in the form of acemannan, it binds to it and activates it and starts optimizing the body's responses to whatever is going on. He said, now here's what's interesting. See Manipole, it had 12% acemannan, 4%, a third of it fell into that range of immune optimizing fractions. And so you gave enough and people got a response. Look at your advanced. Now, we didn't know this at the time. We just didn't know what we didn't know. 1%, it was actually less than 1% of the new advanced had those fractions. What does that mean? You would have had to take 4 times the amount of our advanced to get the same immune response that you got from our original. That's why it didn't work. First time we recognized that. He said, now look what I've done. I've created a brand new process using filters instead of alcohol precipitation. I can now get 17.4% total acemannan per gram, of which 15% is immune optimizing fractions. That's 3.5 times more than what you guys have sold for the last 20 years. And I sat down and explained social entrepreneurship and why I left Manatech and what I was going to do. And he said, look, I have 2 grades of this product called Aloe that I'm making, my main grade and then a high grade. He said, I'll give you the exclusive rights to the high grade to use for mana relief, to use for your buy one, give one projects. Like for instance, I make products for a company in South Korea that sells exclusively to doctors who can use an integrative approach to healthcare. So they use acemannan in the treatment of every condition that they have. And every time a patient gets a bottle of the acemannan, they fund mana relief. So everything is buy one, give one. And so he also agreed to work on a new product for the children of mana relief that was even better than his Aloe, which he ultimately created. Okay, so now 2026 comes along. And I get introduced to Randy and Kathy through Steve. And it's like they're interested in making a new generation of glyconutrition. We've learned a lot about the polysaccharides, and of course, there's a better acemannan that should enhance everybody's response 3 to 4 times greater than ever before. And we want to make a donation to Mana Relief when we sell that product. And so I met with them, met with their senior staff, and said, this feels like a fit. And so what you're going to get access to this weekend is VeraCell. I mean, I know you piloted it to some people. Guys, I cannot tell you how important this is. I can't even give you that perspective because you wouldn't believe it if I told you. And of course, for every bag of VeraCell sold, a child will receive a 30-day supply of Mighty Milk. This is one of the first books that I read when I started researching social entrepreneurship. I love the title, Disruptors. Social entrepreneurs reinventing business and society. Unconventional entrepreneurs are disrupting entire industries by providing new solutions to the world's most pressing issues. You guys, as of today, are converting from distributors of great nutritional technology to social entrepreneurs. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important obviously for the kids. It's important for your customer base that's going to get this benefit. But I want to tell you something. It changes the conversation completely. Everybody makes a list. I learned that in your, advanced training yesterday. And you put on there and don't prejudge, all that. Okay, how did I meet Vicente Fox? I was at a fundraiser, and he was the guest speaker. And afterwards, they said, if you'd like to meet Vicente Fox, stick around and he'll be glad to shake your hand and get a picture or whatever. Well, I wanted to meet Vicente Fox. I mean, president of the 5th largest economy in the world, and he had done some incredible things for transcending Mexico from a third world to a first world economy. And I just wanted to meet the guy. So I get up there and I shake his hand. He said, "So who are you and what do you do?" Well, I said, "Well, I'm Sam Castro. I have a not-for-profit that is providing advanced immune support to the world's most vulnerable children." And he goes, "Really? What are you doing in Mexico?" And I said, "Well, I'm not doing much at the moment because I haven't found the right distribution partner." And here's what he said. "Do you think my wife and I would qualify?" Now, who in here would have put Vicente Fox on their list? I don't think anybody. Or Bill Clinton, or George Bush, or anybody of that level. Why? Because they're too big, they're too important. I'm telling you, when you start talking about meeting the needs of the world's most vulnerable children, you can talk to anybody, anytime, anywhere, and have a meaningful conversation. And as of today, that is a new way that you can talk to people from that perspective. Because I promise you, you will double what we're doing right now in this next year in terms of contribution. And you should go with us to see the impact that is going on with this children. But you all officially today have become disruptors. It's up to you to take advantage of it and change the world. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Look how small I am. What did you think of that? Pretty interesting, hey? I bet you thought that this new product was just a thing that company wanted to get wealthy on and nothing else. Well, now you know that's not just the case. I really do believe that what Sam wants to do is worthy of people's attention. And I really do believe that MPG is a company that is worthy of people's participation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. I thought that before. And then when I went to this conference, I met all these people. That was really driven home and cemented in my thinking. So I guess what I'll say now is, if you find that interesting and you want to be a disruptor, I don't mean a disruptor like, protesting or rallies or whatever, although that is fun. I mean a disruptor as in chipping away at the system that doesn't have our best interests in mind. Many of you, myself included, we've been looking for accountability for those that did specific things to us and those we care about between 2020 and 2024, I guess. And it seems like that accountability may never come. At least it may never come in the way we think it will. What if that accountability looked like more people waking up to the fact that they could take control, not over their own health sovereignty, their own wellness, give themselves the tools they need to be healthy and fight the good fight from that position of strength. What if that was the accountability? What if we helped people do that and helped ourselves at the same time and took some of the control back that we've given up to those that wish to enslave us with pharmaceuticals? Maybe that's the accountability that we can get. Maybe we stop being victims and pretending that someone is going to come and hold people accountable. Maybe we start to do it ourselves in ways that we never thought of before. Well, I think this is a very good way to do it. I think if we can take control of our own wellness and pull ourselves out of that sick care as best we can, as much as we can, if we can keep an open mind and work together to do that, they're going to feel it. They'll feel that for sure. And it requires sharing. It requires some testimonies. It requires duplication. That's why these products are marketed the way they are. It needs a story. It needs somebody to share it. It needs someone to share it with someone who there's already some trust with, because our trust has been destroyed over the last few years. We don't trust sick care. We don't trust, some people don't trust their doctors anymore. We don't trust pharma. So there's a big opportunity and there's a big vacuum left here for people that actually want to make a difference. I say that we become the accountability that we've been asking other people to do on our behalf. And we become sovereign in every area that we can, including our wellness and health. And this is one way we can do it. And how great is it that as we're doing that, doing things to promote health, doing things to promote wealth, pulling people out of the sick care industry, we're also helping feed kids who don't get proper nourishment. I really, and there's more benefits too. I mean, we'll do another live stream talking, maybe me and Lawrence, me and Berta Proud Dad will do another live stream talking about the benefits of Marketplace Global, of this company. But it's not just limited to these things. There's more, and we'll get into that. If you are interested in joining me in this, scan that QR code, send me a message, whatever. The links, I did put the link in the comment once. I try not to do that too much because I don't want to confuse people that came here with someone else. But I want people on my team on this journey with me who want to do the work and want to share these things and want to get this message out. We almost need like disciples of wellness, right? That's how this works. The greatest movements in history have all been peer-to-peer commerce, whether it's sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ or promoting products that actually help people take control of their wellness. It's all about trust and individual conversation, which is where we're headed in a world that's broken trust and doesn't believe in the human connection anymore. We need to be that change. Hope you'll come with me. Here's Stumpy. Meow. P.S. Take your time. Think about it. But while you're thinking about it, I'm going to be signing up major influencers, podcasters, people with huge audience and huge networks. So, think about that.